S&P held its ground today ahead of the PPI number. We closed right above the 200-day moving average, but then spent the day struggling with the opening price. PPI and retail sales will be critical for tomorrow. Stay to the end because we're going to dive into that and what to look for. But first, I'd like to go through about 5 names that we should focus on for tomorrow. First name is Tesla. Now, why? Well, this price cut seems to spur people buying the car. You're watching CarMax and these other used car dealers sell out of their inventory, essentially. CarMax sold out of their, I think it was 50% of their inventory within 24 hours after the price cut. So when you start to see things like that, you have to pay attention. Technically speaking, we have a 510 SMA cross. If you look on the downside, this is signal every single move down. Sometimes the up trajectories are not working very well. They seem to be back in during the summertime, but they're telling us that we might be going through more of a reprieve than we're just going to rally. And if we're going to go through a reprieve, you really don't want to be on the wrong side of Tesla. Another important distinction is the 22-day moving average, which we have not closed above since November. We had a little close above there, and then that was pretty much it, and it wasn't even a higher high. Did a little bit here as well, but not really much to talk about. So since then, we've just been testing it and been unable to close above it. But lately, we're seeing a different pattern, aren't we? You see these levels, these little resistance levels are all of a sudden starting to become support. And we're seeing that everywhere. Instead of bumping our head and stopping, we're starting to see buying coming into them. And then sometimes we're seeing these retests. For example, up, comes back, retest this area, flips, comes back, another retest. And we're seeing it over and over again, these gap downs. And then we're just retesting an area and then going from there. Look at how we tested this area and then held. And that's pretty substantial. I would not rule this out. This was something we actually played around with in the trading community today and did a little trade on. But look at this little pendant right here. How you broke out of that pendant and how you didn't look back. And I think this is what we're seeing more and more of in these tech names. For example, take NVIDIA. Now you can see with NVIDIA right here, just been constant buying. You have about an 8-point swing today. The open is the low, the close is the high. It doesn't get more bullish, quite frankly. There's PPI tomorrow. If not, you'd have to really consider holding much larger positions over the evening. But we have to see how this plays itself out. You have a DTL or a downward trend line right here and you bumped right against it. It's very possible that you just flip it and this becomes a cup, this becomes a handle. I would not rule this out. And you can see how the 55 and the 200 are starting to get closer and closer together. This would definitely be a name I would have on my list. This is exactly what I'm talking about. You're taking these particular points before that used to be resistance points, and all of a sudden they're flipping now to support levels. And that's exactly what we saw right here. Filled in the gap, rejection of that gap, comes back, backfills, and then all of a sudden gives us a little reversal pattern and takes off. I would not rule this out, but we're going to have to see what happens with retail sales and PPI, and we will go over that obviously at the end of this video, towards the end of this video. LULU is one that we have been in the newsletter for some time. Link in description to get the newsletter. Now, if you just take a look at what's transpired here, you can see that we've gapped down, flip, and then now we fill the gap. But there's a lot going on here. Now, obviously the stock dropped on bad news, forms this long bar, long green bar right here, sets up a 3-bar pattern, and then flips, provides an entry upon the follow-up, 1, 2, 3. And you can see that pretty clearly in here. You can see the breakout out of these dojis. You can see how this bar fits into this one. This one gets actually smaller. And then we see the pressure come in and push. And that provided a nice buying opportunity. Now, most people that are buying these kinds of names, they're waiting for it to get above the 5-day moving average, or they're waiting for it to get above some other key level. And that's fine. Doesn't matter if you're using pattern recognition or what you're using, as long as it works. What we're always looking for are signs that what we're doing is right. In other words, are we seeing buying coming in? And one of the key ways to see if you have sponsorship by institutions is watch the end of the day. If you take a look at this, the last 15 minutes of the day, market on close orders really kick in around 350. All we had was buying, just straight buying. So this let me know that even though that I wasn't near the highs of the day, I still had interest. I still had institutional sponsorship. If you want to see if your sponsorship continues, just watch the last 15 minutes of every single day. You can see by these arrows, every single day we had above average buying. And again, we had it today. So instead of having to wait for this to cross the 5-day moving average and then say, okay, now it's time to get in, we're in about $21 cheaper. And the important thing is to get up and in your trades and to look for edge. And that is one way that you can find edge. Now we closed above the 22-day for the first time in over a month. Finally back over the 200-day. So now this will hit everybody's radar tomorrow, which is one of the core reasons why I'm bringing it up. Because now that you see where we're at, I think it's pretty realistic for a test of the 55, which we've been battling before. So if you flip this tomorrow, this 324.20, I would not rule this out. Worst case, you go back to that close, and that's a full gap fill, and that takes us to about 330. But this looks fairly realistic, depending upon how the PPI comes out in retail sales, that this could absolutely just gap fill. You're setting up there, and now everyone's going to be looking for stocks that closed today above the 200-day moving average. So this is going to hit everybody's scan. Another name that should be on everybody's list tomorrow is Taiwan Semi. You can see clearly how we got above that 87.10 level and then pushed straight over. And then we worked off this wick, closing at a new high. A new high, obviously, after earnings is what I'm referring to, not a new all-time high, obviously. But I don't see any reason why you're not going to push to this 92 and at least test it. And look at what's going on down here. Look at all that buying that's coming in. It's been incessant since the beginning of the year. Another one I would watch tomorrow for sure is Goldman Sachs. So this provided a just very simple 1-minute orb in the beginning of the day. Looked like we were just going to gap fill over it. Took a shot at it and it just didn't work out. Blew it out immediately as soon as you could see that it wasn't going to work. When you're trying to play reversals and they don't work immediately and they trigger a stop loss, there is no discussing what's going to happen. You just need to get out of the way. And this is a classic example of why. If you didn't, you basically went for about a 20-point ride. And getting out gives you the clarity to reevaluate the trade and then find another spot in. And that's exactly what we did. We saw the stock break this 327, clicked off a couple of my indicators that I like, and then just rallied back up, tested, rallied up, tested, and then we just pushed and then just scaled out of some, held some, and see how it goes. But instead of staying in a trade and riding this down, simply take, I think it was a $2 loss. From here, we made it back and then some. So I can't stress that enough to honor your stops, especially in this market. We just don't know how things are going to go. Now, why would I have this on my list for you to still look at tomorrow? Well, if we look at the last earnings dates, we can see pretty clear that on this earnings date, we undercut by a little bit, then reversed 2 days later, and then went on a pretty big tear, didn't we? So once this all got digested, that it really wasn't the end of the world, from that low to that peak, we had about a 26% move in 4 weeks. The month before, after we gapped down off the open and sold, 20% in 4 weeks. Here, last earnings, and from peak to earnings, about 10%. Doesn't mean it's always going to happen. Didn't happen 4 quarters ago, but it does provide what we're seeing, which is what? We're seeing these dips being bought in financial, so we might as well try and take advantage of it. Tomorrow's data is very significant. You have core PPI and PPI coming out. Now, the significance of this is that CPI came out and it was good, meaning lower than expected and in some cases in line. Bottom line is, if the producers are paying more than the consumers, 2 things are going to happen. One, either prices are going to go up or consumer or corporate profits are going to drop. And we all know that corporate profits are not going to drop before they try to get the money out of the consumer. And we're going to have to look at retail sales tomorrow. So this could be why we saw weakness at the end of the day. But just watch these numbers at 8:30. We will be live for them. Very important numbers tomorrow, probably the most important numbers in my opinion of the week. Where is the consumer? Are they buying? Also tomorrow, watch how you act to the opening price. You can see here today how we fought it. Now that could just be jitters. That could just very simply be jitters going into tomorrow. To join the Alpha Chasers community, there is a link up here in the top right. Simply click the link and you will be added to the wait list. If you like the video and you like the format, please comment on it. I create content based upon what the comments are, and I answer every single comment. Your comments are greatly appreciated, and it's how I create content. Everybody have a great evening.